Well, good morning. We're recording this on Friday, April 3rd. Had to see what day it was. Yeah, it's Friday, April 3rd. Uh, Apryl Miller, the director at Gretna, Glen, and myself, Reverend John Laughlin from Salem United Methodist Church in Manheim. We were at a meeting yesterday with our district resource team of the West District, and we were talking about the CARES Act and the Paycheck Protection Program loan assistance that the federal government has just created. And we thought it would be best for us to create an opportunity to share the information that we've learned. We are by no means experts. We're not lawyers. We're sharing what we've learned in this short period of time because we think it's important for churches to take advantage of this if at all possible. It's money that is there to help us during this difficult time. And this difficult time, which is affecting us, our ability to worship together, our ability to be together. It's also impacting the financial lives of our members, some of whom are school teachers and they're still getting paid, but others have lost their jobs. They've been laid off, or they're private contractors and they've been unable to leave their home to do their work. So they're going to be experiencing financial shortfalls, and that's going to have a direct connection and correlation to their ability to give to the church the way they had been and the way they would like to. So we think it's important for us to take advantage of this opportunity. Apryl was recently talking with a friend. Why don't you talk about what your friend shared?
Sure. So our friend, a camp friend, and Eastern Pennsylvania Conference United Methodist Church trustee at Good Shepherd, Bob Meese, had shared. He is retired from Fulton Bank, and he just shared that, as we look into this, you want to first look at your local bank, the bank that your church works with first, but recognizing that sometimes their resources to have enough loan officers, enough SBA folks that can help with these sort of loans is limited, that some of the larger banks, Fulton Bank, Truist Bank, formerly BB&T, might be resources that will be able to help you in a more efficient way due to the fact that this is time sensitive, which we'll talk about throughout the PowerPoint.
And if you're watching this at a later date, we did initially have this conversation and share this information at 9 a.m. this morning. Unfortunately, our recording of it did not record. So I think I pushed the wrong button and it didn't happen. So I apologize for that. So this is a re-recording, and we're going to share some of the questions that came up the first time. So if you were in on the 9 a.m., you're not going to hear your voice. You're just going to hear Apryl and I sharing the content that we shared this morning as best we can. And as I shared, we're going to go through 10 things that we think you need to know about the CARES Act Paycheck Protection Program, which is being called the PPP or PPPL. And the information we're sharing, we gleaned from several sources. I know Enjoy watched a webinar by Enjoy Ministry. Do you want to give a quick 10-second summary?
Yeah. That's all right. I got you. It was, just, I thought, efficiently presented, fast-paced, worth the time that it took, and explained a lot of the details. And they have great resources, and I appreciated the fast pace, get it done. Here's the conversation part of their presentation with Enjoy.
And you can go to their website still, and you can watch a rebroadcast of that webinar. So Enjoy Ministries, Church Fuel Ministries also has some good information that I found. Vanderbloemen, which is a employment search firm. They also have some very good information. And Horizon Stewardship, one of our United Methodist stewardship consultants, Joe Park, has some very good information as well. Here's what you'll see if you go to the Enjoy Stewardship Solutions. They have a page set up for the CARES Act and sharing helpful information. That's what Apryl was talking about. This is Church Fuel. If you go to their website, if you just do a Google search, Church Fuel COVID-19 or Enjoy Ministries COVID-19, it'll take you right to their websites. Both of these sites have some similar experts sharing. They also have a very helpful calculator that you can put in your numbers, and it'll tell you what's the maximum amount of loan for which you could apply if you wanted to. This is Joe Park's information from Horizon Stewardship, and he has some very helpful information as well. And Vanderblumen has a lot of links that are available for you to download. They pulled together a lot of helpful information that I found in trying to understand the process and what was happening. Why don't you explain this part, Apryl?
Yeah. So it's, I think, pretty important to know that churches and nonprofits really are eligible to apply for the PPP loan. And the purpose of the program is really to help the small businesses to not lay off employees. That is the goal in this, that we have a period of time that we can continue supporting and being in ministry with our staff, that we can pay them and keep them working as part of this, the reason for the part of the CARE Act. The PP loan should be given if the church doesn't lay off anyone during this 8-week period and has actual expenses. And so, you know, just part of the humanitarian effort, you know, these things are going to trickle down to us for months and maybe years to come. And so keeping folks employed for a period of time is just really critical, and as part of our church community.
The 8-week period for the PP loan program, as I understand it, begins April 2nd. They keep shifting some of the dates, but it's what they're hoping is that small businesses, which a church and Gretna, Glen, and other organizations in our conference would be considered a small business, that they would not feel like they must lay somebody off in the next 8 weeks. They're hoping to not see the unemployment ranks swell even higher than they are right now. And so they've created this program. It's a loan program, but if you meet the basic criteria, then it becomes a loan, it becomes a grant. They forgive that loan. And we'll talk about some of those details. But in order to have that loan forgiven, you do need to have actual expenses. So if you lay everybody off in the next 8 weeks, then you're going to be in trouble. So if you borrow the money, you're committing to keep all of your employees. There is a provision that if you're in financial situations, you could reduce compensation by 25%, and you still would be eligible to receive forgiveness for this loan, thereby turning it into a grant. But their goal is for churches to, and non-small businesses to continue to employ all their employees. And I think this was one of my slides, yes. How much can you apply to receive? They have a basic formula, and this is dealing with payroll. So it's 2.5 times the monthly average of your 2019 compensation. So you have to add up all those numbers, and by compensation, they're looking at everything that's involved in providing compensation for your salaried staff, your hourly staff, even contract employees. You can add all that in. And so it's compensation paid to employees. It's health insurance premiums that were paid by the church on behalf of the employees. You can't write off what the employee, if you had a share and the employee had to pay 50%, you can't write off what the employee individually paid, just what the church paid in terms of health insurance premium. Housing allowance paid to the pastors is also part of the payroll, and pension payments made. Any employees that you haven't that are involved in the denominational pension plan, or even a 403B if you had a separate plan, any payments that were made by the church as an employer on behalf of the employee would be, you could also include that in the formula.
There is a limited amount of money, and it really is essential that we apply. And so there had been some back and forth whether churches and nonprofits could apply. But from what we know, we believe we can all apply. And I would just encourage to apply for it. The money's being loaned on a first come, first served basis until it's gone. And it's going to go quick. And so we want to efficiently gather the information, and we want to go ahead and apply. And it's a simple, John's going to show it to you, a simple form to fill out. There's some things you need to retrieve to be able to fill it out, but we just need to go for it as we care for our people and the church.
April and I were talking before. We fear, well, at least I fear, that if you wait a week or two, the money might be all gone. There's a bucket of $350 billion from which all small businesses in the country are going to be applying. And it's not going to be there much longer. So if you're
Yeah.
thinking about applying, I would not delay. And we'll go through the process of what you need to do. April touched upon this briefly, but the application process is actually handled by the local bank, which seems a little bizarre, but this is how they're doing it, because it's the federal government, when they created this act, they decided to have it handled through the Small Business Association. So local bankers are, many of them are Small Business Association approved lenders. And if they are, then they're involved in this process. They already know about this process. So it's best to contact the local bank through which you already have a relationship. If your local bank is a small bank and they're not aware of what's going on, or they don't have enough lenders, you're free to go to other local banks. You can go to the Small Business Association website, and you can find, you can click on a link to find lenders in your community. And April touched upon some of the big banks have a lot more commercial loan officers who would be available to help process these loans. Some of the smaller banks might only have one person on staff, and they might be swamped right now. So you need to complete the application, which is only 2 pages, although they just revised it this morning. So there's a new revised application. They're trying to make it easier and even more streamlined. But the application is a fairly simple one. And then you need to provide documentation, proof of these actual payroll expenses or insurance premium expenses, or payments to uh, for housing allowance and pension. And I'll run through this process real quick. If you've already have been involved, your local church, in signing a commercial loan, a mortgage, then you know what this process is. If you haven't been through that ordeal, then this is the basic steps. Because this begins as an official loan, it really does need to be approved by church conference. By a charge conference, I'd rather say. A charge conference is when it's just the elected leaders of the church council that vote. A church conference is when every member of the church has a vote. So I would encourage you to ask for a charge conference. So it's just simply handled through your church council. But because it is a loan, you need to have a formal church conference. Now, the DS, our district superintendent, Bum Ku Chung, and our bishop have given permission for church councils to have a preliminary vote so they can begin the application process, because the formal charge conference vote cannot happen until 10 days later. So here's the basic process. You need to request permission from the DS to hold a special charge conference for this purpose. You can't add on other details. It's just for signing this loan document. You need to announce that you're having a charge conference to your church, so it needs to be publicly announced at least 10 days in advance. So if you send a request today, then you can announce today via email, that's sufficient, that you're having a special charge conference 10 days from today, or 11, or whatever you want. And you need to say when it's happening, what time it's happening, how it's happening. And if people want to be involved in listening or sharing, it needs to be as public as you can, a meeting. My church will be doing a Zoom conference call where people can phone in or listen in and share, and then we'll take the vote. Um, you need to have an approved ordained elder who's conducting the charge conference on behalf of our district superintendent, and you work that out with our district superintendent, and you need to record minutes of the meeting and then send a copy of those minutes to the district superintendent and also save them for yourselves. And some bankers may require seeing proof of that charge conference vote. Those that know the Methodist system and our process, they might be looking for that the minutes of that official meeting.
So if you want to apply for the PPP loan, which we encourage you to do, you want to start preparing the required church approvals. Like we said, you want to locate a small business administration approved lender, and there's links on the website to find that. If you don't know that within your own local bank, let them know that you want to apply. Ask for an application, but it's literally so accessible, you should be able to print it out, but they would have them too. You can apply online. I know Fulton Banks is applicable online for that application. And of course, you want to consult your legal, tax, and accounting advisors to ensure you're set up for the proper procedures and internal controls to ensure you're eligible to have the loan forgiven later, because that's really an important key part of this, is to make sure that you're prepared and have the documentation so that you can have it forgiven.
The documents you need to, the documents that you may need to provide, I say may need to provide because it depends upon the lender and what the lender is requiring. Some lenders require more proof and more documentation than other lenders. I know my wife's company applied and they had to provide month-end payroll reports for every employee for all of 2019. So these are some of the, if you're reading, if you're just listening, you need to have proof of payments of what you've paid for the payroll reports, what you've sent in for the quarterly reports to the federal government, and then proof of payments for health insurance premiums and what you've contributed to your different staff members' retirement plan. So you need that documented, print it out, and bring it with you when you meet with your banker for the application process. And the PPP loan application is simple. It's only 2 pages. I'll pull it up in just a second and you can take a quick look at it. Also, just a reminder that as far as the local church is concerned, the Board of Trustees are the legal authority for the local church. So anytime you're entering any kind of legal documents or signing a legal document, it should be a trustee. It doesn't have to necessarily be the president of the trustees, but a trustee is signing on behalf of the Board of Trustees. The local pastor has no legal authority. It's the Board of Trustees who need to sign the loan application, and they would sign it with their name, comma, trustee, or their name, comma, like in my case would be Salem Methodist Church Board of Trustees President, if they wanted to put all the details down. And let me pull up that application. There, you should be able to see that now if you're watching. There's page 1, and you put down the average monthly payroll that the church expense in 2019. Again, the most you can apply for is 2.5 times that. You don't have to apply for the full amount, but that's what you're allowed to apply. And then you put down the number of jobs, meaning the number of employees you had. I'm interpreting that as the total number of employees, both full-time and part-time. So if you have an organist who's part-time and a choir director is part-time, they would be 1, 2, plus the pastor 3, and so on. And again, the owner would be somebody, one of your board of trustees, and you fill out answer those questions. They have details on pages 3 and 4 explaining what they're looking for. And your banker probably was in on a webinar today at 10 a.m. with the Small Business Association, because my wife's banker was, where they're explaining the revised details and trying to make it easier for small businesses, and churches to be able to apply. At our 9 o'clock time, we had a few good questions that came up. April, if you'd share those.
Yeah. So one of the questions was, should we ask for the full amount? What if we don't spend it? And what happens to that in relation to the loan?
And this is, I guess, it depends upon how conservative you want to be. In order to have the loan forgiven, you need to spend 80% of the loan amount for which you're applying on staffing, on salaries, on staff compensation. So if you have less staff in 2020 than you did in 2019, then you might not want to apply for the full amount. If you've laid staff off or you eliminated positions in January, February, then it's probably going to be hard for you to have the same level of staff compensation over the next 8 weeks. If you have less staff. If you have the same amount of staff you have today than you did in 2019, then you should be fine. It's 2.5 times the monthly because in having the loan forgiven, you can spend 80% on staff compensation, and you can spend 20% of the loan on utilities, on mortgage payments, if your church has a mortgage, and so that enables you to cover most of the loan. If for some reason you're not able to spend all the loan on categories for which you would be able to have the loan forgiven, then I believe, from what I understand, the remaining amount would become a loan that is, you have to repay at 1%. So it's a very low interest loan, and I think the cost of that merits applying for the loan and applying for the full amount, that there's not much downside. Any other questions?
Yeah. Another question was, does each 501c3 need to apply separately? So if I have like a preschool in my church, what does that look like, John?
Yes, it's my understanding that every organization, every corporation that is separately incorporated will need to apply individually. And you would need to go through the application process, providing the same documentation. A preschool is a great example that would benefit from this potentially if they have not already laid off their staff. If they've laid off their staff, then they're going to be it's going to be difficult for them to pay their staff for the next 8 weeks. And so if they're still compensating their staff like many school districts are, then this would be a great way for you, in essence, to have the federal government pay your preschool staff for the next 8 weeks. And it'll take a burden off of your back, and it'll help you to be a good steward and to continue to bless your staff, whom you're hoping will be back next September.
Mm-hmm. Another question, John, was relating to the $10,000 grant. If that's a separate application, and should I apply for the $10,000 grant and the PPL? What's your thoughts on that?
As I understand it, when you read through how they're explaining this program, that there's a quick and easy $10,000 grant for which you can apply. And then you kind of avoid having to justify and explain in detail everything if you're a legitimate small business, which a church would be. My church, Salem, Methodist Church in Manheim, we applied for a grant, a loan, which hopefully will become a grant of $30,000. So of that $30,000, if we also applied for the $10,000 grant, then that comes off the 30. So we would get the $10,000 emergency grant, and then we would only get $20,000 for the loan. If your total staff compensation only comes to $10,000, then it probably makes sense to simply apply for the $10,000 emergency grant and forget all the other headaches. And if you go to the website about the CARES Act and the Small Business Association, you'll find some details there about applying for that $10,000 emergency grant.
Yeah. And again, John, the application there's calculators on a couple different those websites to help you figure out what those amounts were, that I think are a real helpful resource that's already there for you.
And I see this as a gift from the government to help small businesses like local churches to not be so adversely affected by what we're going through, because this will have a financial impact on us. There's no getting around that. It's going to have a financial impact on Gretna Glen, and they're trying to apply through the conference like everybody else to try to get in line and to get all the help we can so that we can continue to be in ministry for our people and for our community.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody said to me, well, like, it doesn't make sense. Why are they doing this? And you know, what John said is the why. These times don't make sense. It's unprecedented. And if your church doesn't need money now, this moment, you might be planting some seeds to have money when you actually need it. So I think in my unlawyered, unbanked professional opinion, it just seems like a good idea to go ahead and apply, like John said, to the gift, and see how we can help our community and the people that work with us keep going during this unprecedented time.
And unfortunately, if you wait, if you tarry, I think it's going to be gone. I don't think it's going to last long with the number of small businesses that are already applying. So I encourage you to have a church council vote as quick as you can and start the application process and get in line. And if you end up getting a grant of $10,000 and you don't need it, you can give it to Gretna Glen. They would love the donation because they have incredible ministries that they're wanting to continue to doing on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ and our Methodist Church once this crisis passes and we're able to be together once again. Thank you for listening. Let me offer a quick prayer and then we'll close. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are with us. We ask your blessing upon our churches. We need wisdom. We're going through uncharted waters. We've never been through anything like this. But this isn't new to you, and it's not new to the church at large, because we've gone through crises before. We just pray you would help us to steer clear with wisdom, to listen to your Spirit for direction. Help us to love your people, to care for your people, so that we can continue to be in ministry once we're through this crisis. We ask your blessing upon us and upon our churches, our church councils, our church conference votes, our cabinet and our bishop as they try to help steer us and steer the ship. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening in.